2 minutes. I didn't know this existed. What? How do you guys not know this existed? Maybe because you know what? A lot of people would like in the work area use this a lot, so I'm kind of use it. Yo, Eric, what's up, man? Welcome in, man. I'm super excited to be here. It's our first video coaching call, so it's super exciting. I know, Josue, bro. I guess I made a mistake, guys. My fault. Zoom is the way to go. It's the way to go. But man, I'm surprised you guys are foreign to this. I use this I use this every week, and it's free. But I hope you guys are doing well today. Let me see. Where are you guys from? Where are you guys from? I want to know who's in California, who's out of state. Drop it down. I always like seeing that. Kind of blows my mind. We got people from all over the Dallas, Texas. Okay. I like free things. Yep. Florida, Texas, Chicago, Arizona. Yes. Dang. Arizona. Wow. It's only a couple of people in California. Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Nice. Okay. If you guys can, I know some of you guys may be shy, but I love seeing faces. So if you guys want to turn your camera, love that. Texas is the best state. Let's be real. Ooh. Have you heard of California? That's a pretty good one. Yep, California. Nice. Cameras on there. Yep. Cameras on. Want to see you guys' beautiful faces. But why don't we get started? I know people are just gonna come in as they go at work. Hey, I appreciate you being here though. But why don't we get started? I'm super excited for this first video coaching call. It's not going to be this crazy, super in-depth technical call, but really, the goal for this coaching call, is to go over the basics of video. I know I've gotten that question so much. How do I get started? What are the basic settings that I need to know? And in reality, when you're starting video, your settings and basics are really going to take you far. And if you don't have your basics and your settings right, that always I see causes bad luck in video. So if we could know and get our video basics now down, then when we're shooting video, our video looks good. So why don't we go before the Lord before we start, of course, and then we'll continue on. Lord, we come before you, thanking you for this day that you've given us, Lord, to be here united as a church, Lord, as a group, to learn how to be better creators for your kingdom. As we dive into this lesson, Lord, this video lesson, that you give us the knowledge, you open my mind, you open everybody's minds here to learn something, that they be sponges, that they may soak it in, that they may take it to the local church and apply it to their ministry, Lord, so they may grow individually and grow the kingdom. Guide this meeting that your spirit may be with us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, so let's get right into it. Who's ready for the video basics? Just curious, who here thinks they have like the settings, video basics unlock right now, and understanding the fundamentals of videography? Raise your hands. You guys could put a one in the chat if that's easier. Who think Jesus kind of said maybe one? Eric feels like he has an unlock. Good. Right. So it looks like not everybody here is pretty confident with the video basics, which is good. Right. That means this lesson is going to be very applicable, and you guys will learn something. So let's get right into it. I'm gonna share my screen here. As we, you know, start this lesson. And this, like I said, we're going over video basics. Let me see. Sorry, you guys are going to see some mirrors. All right. You guys can see my screen okay? Good. You guys can see this presentation?
Yeah, we can see it.
Actually, I'm going to move you guys here real quick to my other screen so I can see you guys right here. Okay. All right.
Max, are you recording?
Yes.
Okay.
Cool. Yes, so I'm recording. So for those who can't make it, who couldn't make it, they'll be able to watch this call. So I'm just moving you guys to my other screen here. All right, let's go over the video basics. All right. Okay, here we go. All right, video basics 101. Basically, videography 101. And um, in this lesson, my hope for you guys is that you guys learn 80% of what videography is, or just the basic settings, the foundation. My hope for that is that you guys, you know, may be knowledgeable now to take the knowledge and understand your camera better. What is frame rate? What is shutter speed? What is ISO? What frame rate should I use? And stuff like that. So let's get right into it here. 1 second, guys. I'm having some computer giving me some issues. All right, we're good. Okay, so raise a hand or put one in the chat. Frame rate, shutter speed, ISO. How many of you guys like how much? And how much does that ring a bell in you guys? Is it you guys are familiar with that? Are you guys one? Nice one, cool. All right. And then how many? Just off the top of it, if I asked you guys, who could explain what frame rate is? One in the chat if you can, or shutter speed, or ISO. How many can you guys explain this? Because when I first started, I was like, what is all this stuff? It took me a while to understand it. But if not, all right, let's get right into it. So, frame rate, shutter speed, ISO, and more. We're going to cover it in this presentation. So, for this one, the first one is frame rate. So, you guys have probably heard this saying, or you guys have seen it in your camera, called frame rate. And videography is pretty similar to photography, just a little bit different. In some technical aspects. So when you take a photo and you look back, your camera takes one image, right? Depending on if you're whatever you're working on, you take one photo, you see it's a still image. When it comes to video, video is basically what frame rate is how many images are taken per second. Have you guys ever see on your camera 24 frames, 60 frames, 120, stuff like that? Right, so what frame rate is, like I said, is how many images are taken per second. So if we look at the industry and if we look at what movies are filmed in, the industry standard for frame rate is 24 frames per second, or it's called FPS for short. Like I said, what most movies are shot on. And to be accurate, on camera, you see it as 23.976 FPS. To break it down a little bit more, what frame rate is, if you're shooting in 24 frames per second, that means your camera is taking 24 images per second, and your camera plays it back in 24 frames per second. It makes it look like smooth video. Does that make sense so far? Right. So in essence, it's just a bunch of pictures being played back in smooth video. So the industry standard is 24 frames per second. Why is that the industry standard? Because when we shoot in 24 frames per second, it looks the most cinematic and natural to our eye. So there's a movie that Will Smith stars in. I forgot what movie it is. And they shot that movie in 60 frames. All of it. I don't know if you heard of it, Caleb, or you've seen it. But it just looks so unnatural. It does not look good. It does not look cinematic. It just looks unnatural because that's not what the natural eye sees. We see in 24, that's the closest thing, 24 frames per second, right? So for a cinematic look, frame rate, the industry standard is 24 frames per second, or on camera, it's 23.976. So a lot of the times I shoot in 24 frames per second to get that cinematic natural look for my videos. Does that make sense, guys? So when it comes to frame rate, depending on what camera you have, there's different types of frame rate. There's 24 frames, 60, 120, and some cameras even go up to 240. And we'll break down what frame rate each frame rate does. So first one, 24 frames, is the most cinematic industry standard that you want to use for video. So let's move on here. So I got this little image to kind of break it down for you here. So if we look at this image, this is what our camera is doing here. So think about this. When we're doing video and we're shooting in 24 frames per second, every second your camera's getting one still. So over here, just think about this. And then it plays all back fluidly to create a smooth video. And when you're shooting in 60 frames per second, it obviously gets more frames per second. So that's why if you export a video in 60 frames or you look at a video in 60 frames, it's going to look almost a little bit too smooth and unnatural. So this is just kind of gives a visual representation of how your camera works. So right here, every single second, this is how many images are being played back, which looks like smooth video to our natural eye. So hopefully that image helps. And there's two things I want to point out. So when it comes to frame rate, there's your playback or timeline frame rate. So meaning this is what you're seeing in your editing software. So who uses Premiere here or Final Cut? Good question, Eric. Eric says, so Max, should one always transcribe 60 to 24 frames? We'll get into that. I'm about to get into that. So there's your playback or timeline frame rate. So in Premiere or Final Cut or DaVinci, whatever you use, your timeline has a playback frame rate of either 24, 60, or whatever. You probably never ever want to shoot, timeline 120. And it's always recommended in your timeline to be editing in 24 frames per second because that will give you the natural look. But meaning if you shoot your footage in 60 frames and you throw it in a 24 frames per second timeline, right? When you're playing back 60 frames in a 24 FPS timeline, 60 frames, it takes 2.5 seconds or 2 seconds for 60 frames to be played in 24 frames. So meaning that your footage will be 2.5 slower. So in slow motion. So when you shoot in 60 frames, you shoot in 60 frames because you want to slow it down on a 24 frame timeline. But for example, if you're editing on a 60 FPS timeline with 60 FPS frame rate, then it takes 1 second for those 60 frames to play in your timeline. So it's not slowing down. So Eric said, should you transcribe your 60 FPS footage to 24? 100% always. That's what I do. Because when you shoot in 60 FPS, you're shooting with the intention of slowing it down. And when you throw it on a 24 FPS timeline, right here, it plays 2.5 times slower. And then if you guys are shooting in 120, it plays it back 5 times its slow motion. Does that make sense? If it's confusing, I could always clear some things up. So frame rate is super important, not only what you shoot in, but also what you edit in. So it's always recommended to edit in 24 frames per second. And when I first started and I would edit in 24 frames per second, I wouldn't slow down my 60 frames footage in the timeline. It would look so smooth and unnatural. I was like, why does it look like that? Because when you're on this timeline, 24 frames per second, sorry, Anna said, so the less FPS, the faster visually. Sorry, can you clear that? So the less FPS, the faster visually. If I understood your question correctly, so the less FPS meaning it's not necessarily faster, but you just can't slow it down. So 24 frames, meaning why you can't slow it down is because there's not enough frames per second to be able to slow it down. So have you guys ever slowed 24 frames per second down and it just looks choppy? I've done that before, and because there's not enough frames per second. So 60 frames per second gives you enough frames to be able to slow it down. So it's always recommended to edit on a 24 FPS timeline because like when you export, it's the most cinematic, natural looking to the eye. So again, most of us are not going to be shooting 120. Maybe some of us are, but a lot of us, when we want to slow things down, we want to shoot in 60 FPS, but put it on a 24 FPS timeline. And in your timeline, you could either manually click each clip and slow it down by percentage, or on Premiere, you could transcribe your 60 FPS to 24 and when you play it back, it's already in slow motion. So if this makes sense, just put a one in the chat. If not, if you guys have any clarifying questions, I'm more than happy to go over that because I know this could be a little confusing. One, cool, good. All right, so that is basically what frame rate is, right? Just the amount of images you're capturing per second. So it's important to know what you want to shoot and how you want to shoot it. So, for example, when I'm shooting something that I know I don't want to slow down, for example, testimonial or interviews, there's no reason for you to slow that down. I want the most natural cinematic look, so I'm going to shoot in 24 frames per second. But if I know I'm going to get some slow motion, um, slow motion, I want to shoot in 60 because there's enough frames to slow it down. What was your question, Jose? Can you put that? Or Caleb, do you mind reading the questions? I can't look at both screens when they ask it. Thank you. Okay.
He's just responding to a previous question about Zoom.
Oh,
Zoom.
okay, no worries. All right, so I'm glad this makes sense. So this is the first part when it comes to understanding the basics, your frame rate, and that's going to help you understand what you want to shoot and how you want to shoot it, and what frame rate to use at each time. Victoria said, "Can you read that for me, Caleb?"
Yeah. Victoria asked, and all of this would be able to be managed through the camera settings, right?
Yes. Yes. So what I'm gonna show you here, right here, actually in a second. So I'm gonna switch my camera here. So I'll show you guys. So for those who are kind of beginner to the, or you guys are new to your camera, I have my camera right here. So most of us, I assume, have Sony, right? Some of us maybe might have some Canon, which, God bless you. But so when you're shooting, everything can be controlled on your camera here. So when it comes to Sony, all Sonys are pretty much similar in the user face. So you can control everything on your camera here. So if I go to my menu, and let me get this a little closer. When I go to my menu, here is your frame rate, recording frame rate here. And you see how I have different options? Different options here. So I have 23, I have 29, 30 frames, I have 60, 120. So all this is controlled through your camera. So I like to shoot, just say I want to change it to 60 frames here. I could change it there and then boom, I'm in 60 frames. And then your camera will let you know what frame rate you're on right here on the top. If you guys can see that. I don't know if it's in focus. But it'll let you know on the top. Can you guys see where it says right here? Frame rate. So your camera will give you the ability to change your frame rate and your settings all through here. Does that make sense? So I'm always changing my frame rate through here. Perfect. All right. Going back to my camera. All right. All right, cool. And then I'm going to share my screen one more time. Okay. So let's get back to it. All right. So that is what frame rate is, and understanding frame rate. Super crucial because a lot of the more beginners that I talk to don't know what frame rate to shoot in. They'll be shooting in 60 for a testimonial video or an interview, and that just doesn't look natural. Or they don't know when to shoot in 24 frames per second. So 60, easy, just remember 60, you're going to slow it down. 24, you're not. Is 30 frames FPS good? I can't go to 24. Good question. So 30 frames is more for TV. Standard to TV, like if you see on TV, most TVs shoot in 30 frames per second. That's the industry standard for that. You don't really want to shoot ever in 30 frames unless you're strictly shooting for social, like Instagram, because Instagram is optimized to take 30 frames per second. 30 frames per second is, I wouldn't use it for interviews, but if you want to slow down a tiny bit, very minimal, you can, but I wouldn't really recommend it for your like regular shoots. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. So let's move on here. So frame rate, hopefully you guys understand that. And then let's go to shutter speed. All right, who knows shutter speed? Angel, and we'll answer your question too about why you can't shoot in 30 frames. There might be a setting issue on your end because you should be depending on your camera. Can you read that question for me, Caleb?
It's not a question.
Oh,
Victoria just says, "Oh, okay, yes, that was super helpful."
cool.
Saying that she's getting the hang of things.
Okay, awesome. That makes me happy, Victoria. Thanks for your comment. But now we're looking at shutter speed. Shutter speed is responsible for motion blur and shares relationship with frame rate. So meaning that if if I when you're moving your camera, right, and you have your shutter speed, it's responsible for the motion blur. It's kind of similar to photo capturing, images per second. When someone's running fast or a car's passing by, you want to have a higher shutter speed to get that in frame or in the shot. But it's a little bit different when it comes to video. So I'll share my camera here in a second, how that looks, but we'll talk about the industry standard. So shutter speed, like I said, is responsible for motion blur. Meaning, have you guys ever seen that slow motion or that slow shutter move where it looks like people are out of like almost they look like they're what's the word? Yeah, just the shutter is very slow, and you guys seen those photos. Caleb has showed it, so it's almost similar to that, and it shares a relationship with frame rate, and I'll tell you guys how. Meaning, when you're controlling your shutter speed, the industry standard is the 180-degree shutter rule. Who has heard of that? I didn't hear about that till a long time ago. I mean, till not to like a year, 2 years after I started video. Meaning, what is the 180-degree shutter rule? So the 180-degree shutter rule gives you the most natural look. Meaning, uh, basically means your shutter speed is always double your frame rate. So double your shutter speed according to your frame rate. So for example, if you shoot in 24 frames, you want to shoot 1 over 50. If you shoot in 60, you want to shoot over 1 over 20. Or in some cameras that don't have this, they have 1 over 25, and that's okay. And if you're shooting 120, you want to shoot in 1 over 240. Why? Because it gives the most natural look on camera. If you have too slow of a shutter, there's too much motion blur and it just doesn't look natural, or doesn't look unless it's in a more advanced technique, but you can mess with that. Or if you shoot too high, your footage looks way too smooth and it looks unnatural. So the 180-degree shutter rule means just doubling your shutter speed according to your frame rate. So you always want to stay double. And if you notice, even if you move it a little bit, like if you're at 170 of 1 over 70, it would look unnatural. So when you guys are always shooting, just say you're shooting 24, you always want to double it. 1 over 50th, 1 over 50, or 1 over if you have the FX3 or FX30, you have 1 over 48, which is spot on. So hopefully that makes sense. That's the shutter speed and rule right there. And what I mean when they share a relationship, that's what I mean. When it comes to shooting video, those are the two settings you're not going to touch. So once you set your frame rate and you set your shutter speed, you're not going to move it unless you want to do a more creative style look like slow shutter, or you wouldn't really use a higher shutter speed. But if you want to get more technical and you want to do a slow shutter, that's the only time you move your shutter. But your frame rate and your shutter speed should always be locked in. So hopefully that makes sense. I've seen some people shoot in 24 frames, but they're like a 1 over 100 shutter, which gives it that unnatural look. So this is the rule when it comes to shooting in video. Make sense, guys? Good? Cool. All right. So, and then I'll show you my camera here in a second. I'll show you how it looks. All right. So if we look at my camera here, I'm shooting in 24 frames per second right here. And I'm just going to put my mouse here, and I'm going to move my shutter speed all the way down here. Give me a second. Move my shutter speed down to, I'm going to show you guys how it looks like in 1 over 50th. So I'm going to get really close. So can you guys see it okay? Kind of? Am I out of frame? I can't tell.
Yeah, no, we could see it. It's good.
Okay, so you see when you look, when I move it, it looks, there's like a natural blur. Sorry, it might be a little hard for you guys to see, but let me see. It's inverted in my camera, so it looks, so there's a natural blur that you guys see. And then when I'm gonna move my shutter all the way down to just say 1/5, and then I'll look at it. Actually, that does not make sense. Okay, so you see how like when I move it, it's just super slow. That gives it the unnatural look. You see how the motion blurs up now, or actually, yeah. So if, I don't know if you guys could see that, but hopefully you guys can. So there's like a pretty unnatural motion blur there, with like a slow shutter right there. So that's what happens when your when your shutter speed's off. And then obviously if you go up in shutter speed, you have like a super like smooth uh, image, which just doesn't look right.
Can I stop you real quick,
Yeah.
Max?
Hmm.
So, just quick tip, guys. If you can't see his screen fully, tap on the three dots when you go to his like his little window, and then it'll say crop this video, or it'll say show the full video. So if you do show the full video, you'll be able to see his full screen.
Right. Do you guys want me to do that again, or did you guys see it? Good. Okay. So yeah, you'll see it gives that unnatural look. So like I said, you always want to be double your frame rate. So let's go back here. All right, moving on. If you guys need if you guys have any questions, just stop me right away. Just stop me and just ask. Okay. All right, here we go. So shutter speed. Okay, so now shutter speed, like I said, and frame rate do not move. They are locked in unless, like I said, you're doing a creative look like the slow shutter. So since your shutter speed and frame rate are locked in and are very limited, there's times where we run into overexposure. So, for example, when it comes to photo, you could crank your shutter up and you could compensate for the overexposure of the sun or out the lighting. But in video, you can't do that. You can't crank your shutter all the way up because, again, you have that unnatural look. So, how do we do that? How do we compensate for that? And you can't change your frame rate because obviously it's stuck at whatever you're at. So when you run into overexposure, there's these things called ND filters. What are ND filters? ND filters are basically sunglasses for your camera. Have you guys ever seen that dark filter that goes on the front of your lens? So those are basically the sunglasses for your camera, meaning it's a tint almost that lowers the exposure of the light going in the camera. So using ND filters keeps our exposure nice and even, so we still have freedom over our motion blur and aperture. So a lot of us, the only thing you guys will find out is the only thing you could move in your settings when it comes to shooting video is either your aperture, meaning your f-stop or the depth of field, or your ISO, and sometimes not even your ISO if you're shooting a log, and we'll get into that. So a lot of the time, I use my ND filter almost every shoot when I'm shooting outside because I'm so limited on my settings that I need to limit the light going into the camera. So how do I do that? I throw on an ND filter. And after this, if you guys have more questions on what ND filters you guys should buy, we'll ask that at the end. So this is how you overcome that overexposure issue. Any questions on this? Pretty self-explanatory. Just sunglasses for your camera. Cool. All right, ISO. ISO is a pretty one of the first things you learn about when it comes to your camera. So ISO refers to the sensor's sensitivity to light. A higher ISO number means that sensor is more sensitive to light, allowing more faster shutter speeds or wider apertures in low light situations, but at the cost of potential image noise or grain. A lower ISO means less light sensitivity, resulting in cleaner images but requiring more light or slower shutter speeds. So what does it mean? ISO basically just means your camera brightness. ISO basically equals brightness. The higher ISO, the more noise. The lower, the less noise. And who here has log on the camera? Who has here? Put a 1 if you have log. Or who knows what log is? 1. You guys ever heard about that? One. Okay. So not a lot of us don't. I guess not a lot of us have log or don't know about log. So there's your ISO. Your ISO meaning just basically um, the brightness of your camera, and I'll show you guys here in a second the settings of how to change that. And then there's a thing called base ISO. So for those who shoot in log, like myself and Caleb, what log is basically a desaturated flat profile, giving you the most dynamic range for you to manipulate in post production. So when people shoot in log, that means they're gonna color grade the image, meaning they're gonna add colors, they're gonna be creative with it. And when you're shooting in log, there is a base ISO. What does the base ISO mean in log? So when you shoot in log, each camera has a base ISO, meaning that there's an ISO specifically where you get the best image with the least amount of noise and most dynamic range. So the base ISO when you shoot in log basically means you're getting the best image with the least amount of noise. So for example, when it comes to my Sony, when I'm shooting an S Log 3, that's the log profile Sony has, the base ISO is 800 or 12,800. And when I shoot in these base ISOs only in log, this only applies for log, I'm getting the best image possible with the least amount of noise. So let me show you here how that looks. Share my screen. Share my camera here. All right. So if you guys see, here in a second, let me change. All right, I'll show you guys here. All right, so when it comes to your ISO, all right, you could, all this is changeable in your settings. So you have your ISO here. So if you're not shooting in log, you always want to try to be at the lowest ISO, meaning that's going to give you the best looking image with the least amount of noise. Obviously, that just depends on your lighting situation, but you always want to be at the lowest ISO. And as you guys see, when I move my ISO, you see how the screen gets brighter? The higher the ISO obviously means the brighter the image. So when you need to let in more light and you can't move your shutter speed or you can't move your any other settings, you go to your ISO. But when it comes to your main lighting, letting in light in your camera, the first thing you want to do is mess with your ISO. So this is how you change it. It's different. It's different. You can change it differently in different cameras, but that's how I did in mine. So you guys see right here. So, but if I wasn't shooting in log, I'd want to be at like 100, 200 ISO, depending on my lighting situation. And usually some Sony cameras are really good with low light and could maybe go up to like 3200. You would agree, Caleb, would be the max before you start getting a ton of noise. And if you're shooting log, for my people who shoot in log who color grade, when you shoot in log here, you'll see, for those who have like Sony cameras or FX3s and stuff like that, you'll see that I have a base ISO of 800 right here. So I'll show you guys my settings. So you'll see here how you see how that says base. So my camera's telling me that's my base ISO because I'm shooting in log. So when you shoot in log, you always want to be at your base ISO, always. So when I shoot my videos, I never move my ISO. And I either use my aperture or lighting or bring in lights to bring in more light and things like that. So that's ISO for you guys. All right. Any questions on that? No? Okay, cool. All right. So now we got the three basic settings on your camera that you must understand and need to know. So actually, I'm gonna give you guys an example of how it would look like in each scenario when you're shooting. Your settings should look like. So let me switch my camera one more time. So let's say you're shooting in 24 frames per second. Here. You're shooting in 24 frames per second. All right, you guys see I'm at 1/50th, 1/50. in 24 frames. So that means I have doubled my shutter speed according to my frame rate. I'm shooting a log, and you guys can see that my base ISO at the bottom here is 800. And right now it's pretty bright in my room, so I could, you know, I'm pretty exposed. And the only thing you guys would be able to move here is your aperture. So that means your depth. So your f-stop right here, so right here. So that's the only thing you guys would be able to move in as far as to control light when it comes to your video settings. So we are kind of limited when it comes to video, honestly. If you're shooting in log, this is only applies if you're shooting in log. If you're shooting in a non-log profile, you can move your ISO and aperture. So when you're shooting log, you're honestly kind of limited, but you learn how to adjust. So that's how your settings should look like. And then I'll go to my menu and I'll show you here. So you guys will see I'm at my base ISO. I'm at, you guys can see I'm at 1/50th, and then you guys can see, oh, I'm shooting in 60 frames. Oh my gosh, guys, exposed. So I should be at 1/25. So my settings right here. These are the perfect settings for every frame rate and shutter speed and everything. That's what it looks like. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. And then obviously, if you're shooting in 120, it's just same thing, just double your frame rate and all that good stuff. All right, so let's move on. You got the fundamentals down to the three ISO, shutter speed, and frame rate. All right, so any questions on that before I move on? All right, cool. So audio, let's get into audio. So something I learned pretty late in my video career starting was how important audio was. One thing you'll learn is that people will put up with shaky footage. They will put up with maybe overexposed footage. But what people won't put up with is bad audio. So have you guys ever watched a video where the audio just is horrible and I'm clicking off? So having good audio, not saying professional, just good audio in your videos is super crucial. So people do not put up with horrible audio. Let me tell you guys that. So we're going to go into a little bit of audio when it comes to video. So I mean audio meaning capturing audio on your camera. Just say you are interviewing someone or you're trying to get ambient noise, things like that. So there is so many different ways to capture audio, but I'm only going to mention two. I mean, there's a ton. Like I'm capturing audio on this mic. I think it's like a condenser mic, the proper term is. But really what you guys are going to be mostly using when it comes to capturing audio for your church content is either a shotgun mic. Does anybody have a shotgun mic here? No shotgun mic? So the number one method, or not number one, the first method is the shotgun mic. So usually where you're going to see what shotgun mics are those you guys can see right here. There are those little mics that go on top of your camera, and shotgun mics capture what's in front of it, meaning the noise, in a very narrow pattern. So shotgun mics only capture what's in front of it in a very narrow direction. So it doesn't capture stuff behind it. It doesn't really capture stuff beside it, but shotgun mics really capture what's in front of it. So when it comes to just say someone talking from the camera, or you trying to get ambient noise or things like that, a shotgun mic is really good to up your quality instead of using your internal microphone for your inside your camera. And also, have you guys ever seen those people that have the boom mics in the movies where they're pulling so that's also a shotgun mic. That is a higher quality shotgun mic that is used for interviews, for movies. Really, you guys are not, I don't see you guys using it besides in interviews. A really high quality mic that is super good for higher production, things like that. But when it comes to your everyday, every Sunday mic, a shotgun mic like the Rode, like a Rode mic is really good. I know Caleb has one and I've used it before. It's really good. So next up, we have our wireless and lav mics. Who has DJI mics? And I love those things. I love those DJI mics. So There is your wireless mics, meaning that you could put this in your camera, and from a distance, you could. It's basically when you're doing interviews, when you just say you're doing a filming a testimonial at church. These are good wireless mics to clip on for social content, interviews, and things like that. And when it comes to these wireless mics, there's these things called lav mics, and really good for capturing high quality audio and hiding the mic. So all the time I use this for interviews, and it's really a tiny, tiny little mic that goes inside someone's shirt, clips on, and captures really high quality audio. So these are the only two I really see you guys using: shotgun mic and wireless and lav mics. Do you guys have any questions about this? Good so far? If you guys have any questions, just put it in the chat. All right, let's move on. So also, just a reminder, when it comes to wireless, do you like hide them? I know we hide lav mics, but I don't see. So when it comes to microphones, I always like to hide them, but it really just depends on the content you're filming. So when it comes to social content, that's more casual. People don't really care, like if the mic's popping up. But if you are filming something more professional, you always kind of want to try to hide the microphone. So I would always, recommend if you're doing like a high quality interview, I would try to hide it. So there are interviews that I do that I tape the live microphone inside the shirt and then it's hidden. So good question. Let's move on. All right, so moving on to one of our last. What's the price for lav mics? So the lav mic, the mic could range anywhere from like 30 to 100, 150, just depending. After this, we could go over. I'm gonna share what good mics there are. But when it comes to the wireless mics, like the DJI ones, those go for maybe like, if you want two mics or one, it could go from like $150 to $300. But I love it. Like it's awesome. So I use it for all my shoots. So let's go into camera movements. So one of the things that kind of separate good videographers and amateur are your camera movements. And honestly, I do see like a lot of amateur camera movements, but I'm gonna share with you guys 3 camera movements you guys can start using in your videos that will kind of just make you look a little more professional, make you look a little more, make the video just look better. I mean, they're pretty basic and these are industry standard movements. So I'll show you guys here in a second. So the first one is the pan. What is a pan? And when I heard this term a long time ago when I was a beginner, I was like, what is that? So what is a pan? I'll share my screen here and I'll show you my camera. Let's go here. So the pan is, if you guys go and look at my camera here, like Caleb said, if you guys can't see my full screen, you guys can press the 3 dots and make it full screen on my name. But the pan is when you move the camera horizontal left and right, like this, left and right, and it's really good for following subjects or revealing information. And when it comes to panning, it's really good to use it on a tripod because you don't want to move up and down. But it's really good for tracking subjects, like someone's walking, someone's like running. Someone's running, you want to track them, a pan. So moving left and right is a good camera movement. And you could obviously move that side to side. But a lot of people I see just stay still. And that's okay for some shots, but if you want to add some style, some creativity, a pan is just this. You're not moving the vertical axis, just the horizontal. And I use this all the time. So this is a good camera movement when it comes to video. When it comes to tilt, the second one, tilt really means it's just the same thing, just moving up and down. So really good for same thing, tracking subjects. So you see I'm moving my camera vertically, just this. Really good to have on a tripod or maybe those gimbal shots. And then a really good one that I use all the time is the push in, pull out shots. And that is really good for revealing locations or emphasizing subjects. So let me zoom out a little bit here. Go. So for example, when it comes to push in, meaning you are literally pushing the camera into location, revealing a location, or you are moving into a subject, like a person. They're really good for emphasizing a subject. Or you could do the pull out, which is going backwards. If you're pushing, you have your your tilt, good for tracking, and then you have your pan, left and right. So these are pretty. These are really they're basic, but they're industry standard that movies use all the time to this day. We can make them look really good if you know how to use them, or 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 if you use them wrong, they could just look amateur. Yeah, Kev said, think of moving your ZY x-axis. So pretty. These are three movements I use on basically almost all my shoots. Really good. You just have to practice. So really good. Usually the pan and tilt are good for on tripods, and the push in you could do handheld. Pull out if you want to do a really nice one. You could do on gimbal, things like that. So Eric said, not a direct video question, but how often not a direct video, but how often should one add video to the church content to not water it down? We'll get to that here in a second. We're going to get to Q&A here in a second. Do you recommend moving fast or moving for fast moving subjects? So it really just depends what emotion you want to convey in the video. So do you want a fast action? Do you want it just to be? Do you really want to focus on just the fast moving subject and emphasize that, or it just depends what emotion you're trying to convey. So when it comes to people in the church, when they're dancing and when they're they're praising, I like to move fast because I want to evoke that energy, that just high energy emotions. So it just depends. But usually, yeah, I move fast, but sometimes there's times where I move slowly, just depending on what emotion you want to convey. Any questions as far as movement? Good. We're good. Okay. All right, and that's pretty much the basics. That's pretty much the basics of video. So we went over frame rate, shutter speed, audio, and camera movements. Do you guys feel a little more confident in understanding more your camera settings and things like that? And if you guys are confused about anything, just let me know. We could answer you. Victoria said yes. Type of one in if you guys feel a little more confident, have a little more understanding of what each thing is. One, nice, Jesus. Good, got a little more understanding. One, nice. And I want to be transparent. Type of two if you guys still are a little confused on any of this, because I would love to clarify any questions you guys have. As far as frame rate, shutter speed, 3, that means 3. That means he gets it 100%. But okay, good. So you guys are getting it, which is really good. So does anybody have any questions regarding anything about video? What do you guys think? What do you guys think about this? Pretty good as far as moving forward when it comes to shooting on your camera, understanding your settings. You guys can give a thumbs up. Nice, Jesus gave a thumbs up. See some thumbs up there. All right. So Angel, let's get into this. Why do you think my camera doesn't go to 24 frames per second? So maybe, can you mute yourself, Angel, maybe, so I could help you out? What camera do you have?
I have the ZV-10.
ZV-10?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you go in your settings, let me share my screen here. So the ZV-10 is a little bit different when it comes to settings. So do you have like a similar user? It's a little bit different, right? When it comes to...
Yeah.
So when you go to your menu, and you see your frame rate like this, you don't see a 24 frames.
No, it only gives me 4, 8, 15, 30, 60, and 120.
You said
Yeah.
four frames, huh? That's weird. Four. Okay, so it might be the format you're recording in. So, can you find your format?
Yeah.
So find your format. So that will be your file format, meaning what you're shooting in. So it should be
It's
something like this.
4K.
4K. Is it like XAVCS 4K
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
okay? Let me see. That's odd. What
Well,
about
one of
your
the things might be he might need to be in like video mode for like the actual setting, because
right?
like sometimes he could be in program or uh, like make sure he's in manual for the video mode.
Right. Do you have your camera with you? Maybe I could guide you.
Yeah, I have it. Yeah.
Okay, let me. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. So, yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. We're gonna kind of open it up to a Q&A right here in a second. So anything video related, um, is the time to ask anything. So it could be about settings, it could be about lighting, audio, really anything you guys have questions about. Now's the time. So we're gonna open up to a Q&A here. You said it's the Sony ZV-E10,
Yeah.
just the Mark One.
Yeah.
All right, let me see. Do you have your camera with you?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see your settings. So the this camera should shoot. I mean, every camera should really shoot 24 frames. Um, I want to see what your settings look like. So, are you in movie mode, or are you in you know this type mode, like when it comes to
Yeah. Yeah. It says yeah.
movie mode? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so movie mode. What's your Can you show me your screen so I can see?
Um
If you guys have any
like
questions.
this?
Yeah, perfect. Let me move you over here to my other screen. Um, okay, so file format, your HD, recording settings. Can I see that? Can you go to recording settings?
Yeah.
Let me see. 60, 30. Yeah, there's 24 frames right there.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Cool. Cool. Let's try it out. Click 24 frames.
Um
No worries, Jesus.
yeah.
Sorry. So click 24 frames. And it also might be so yours has 24 actual FPS. It might be the region you're in because in when it comes the western region has 23.9, but other countries have exactly 24. So it might be a
'Cause
setting that you might be in. So click 24 frames and try to record and see if it's recording fine.
this one?
Yep, yep, that's it.
And yeah, so I click that one and then I go to SNQ and then it still tells me the frame rate's at 120.
Right. Yeah. So S&Q, do you know what that is?
No.
So S&Q just means when you're shooting in slow motion. So
Oh,
S&Q
okay.
is used for slow motion only. So for high
Oh,
frame rates. So you don't really want to use S&Q. Like S&Q is not something you're gonna touch unless you're gonna shoot in a 120. So you don't want to really have that on or have that activated. It's showing 120 because that's the frame rate needed to shoot in super like slow motion. So,
uh,
but you got it. You got it in there.
yeah.
So just click that setting. That's your 24 frames, and then um, uh, try it. Shoot on it, and it should be fine. Does that help a little bit? Do you got it down?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right.
All right. Thank
So
you.
of course I got you. All right. Jesus says, when you have wireless mic like DJI, do you prefer to have a lav mic attached or just run the transmitter alone? So I like to have just depending, like I said, what I'm shooting. I like to have my 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 like if I'm shooting an interview, I have a live mic attached. If I'm shooting something high quality where I don't want to show the transmitter, I like I said, I do the live mic. But if I'm shooting like social content where it just doesn't, it's more casual. It doesn't really matter. It's not high production. That's when I just leave the transmitter because sometimes you just need something fast, easy, effective, and that social content is really you need just attaching it. You just film, film it and go. But if you're doing like more sit down, more high quality, if you need something to capture high quality audio, then I always touch the live mic. Yeah, hopefully that helps. Um, Let me know if that helped you out, Jesus. And then Eric said, "What do you color grade on? Is DaVinci worth it?" So I color grade on Premiere Pro. I will say that DaVinci is way better when it comes to color grading. I did try out DaVinci for a couple months, but for me it was just like a learning curve, so I just stuck with Premiere. But if I were to tell people, like if I were to start all over, I would start with DaVinci. The only thing is, I can't really help people that are on DaVinci because I don't know DaVinci too well as far as color grading. But if you learn it down, and something I'm considering moving to DaVinci for color grading, but that is like the industry. That's what colorists, professional colorists, color on. You see movies color graded on there, so 100% worth it. And it's just optimized better for your MacBook. So Premiere, maybe Premiere always crashes, but I'm just used to Premiere. I know how to color grade on there. I've got it down. But I think DaVinci is worth it. But the only thing is, I'm just not a professional, so any questions related to DaVinci, I wouldn't be able to answer. But I'm pretty sure there's like a lot of DaVinci users on here that could help. About Final Cut, I think Final Cut is pretty good too. I know we got some Final Cut users that are really good. I know Samuel Huff in the community is really good, and he uses Final Cut. I've seen Final Cut. It's very basic when it comes to color grading. You don't have as many tools compared to Premiere or DaVinci. DaVinci is just a beast when it comes to color grading. But Final Cut, I feel like it's a little bit below Premiere, but still really good. You could color grade pretty good stuff on there. So I've never used I've used Final Cut a couple of times. But any more questions as far as video, um, color grading when it comes to settings? What gear you should buy, recommend. We're gonna end here in a second. Um, Jesus says, before I forget, have you shot an 8K before? I have the Canon R5C. Sorry for having Canon. Which Canon? Yeah, shoots an 8K, but I haven't messed with it. Plus, I have MacBook, which probably would need. Yeah, 8K is. I've shot an 8K for fun, and it just destroys my computer. I cannot play it back, but it is super crispy. Canon, I love Canon. I'm just kidding, guys. I love Canon. Canon C70, the R5C are really good. They're beast. I think the colors are better, in my opinion, than Sony. Color science is better, but yeah, 8K is just, yeah, I don't even know why. If you want to shoot super 8K for church, make you guys look all beast, but yeah, I don't think your MacBook would even handle it unless you have like a M4 Pro or Max chip. But main main what main came for color grading or main camera for color grading. So when it comes to camera, that doesn't really play a big role in color grading. It's the software and knowing how to color grade. But I will say the only um, the only effect or the only, I guess, part it plays the camera is if it has S log and the dynamic range. So, for example, if you're shooting with a camera that doesn't have log, you can't color grade it because it's not shooting in a flat profile with enough information for you to manipulate the colors. But a good camera for color grading, I guess, would be the most with dynamic range or with S log 3 or for those C log if you're shooting on Canon. Um, but the FX3 has really good dynamic range. It shoots in S log 10-bit 422, meaning, I know that's super technical, meaning that you just have the most dynamic range, or not the most, but a ton of dynamic range to mess with it. So if you're really concerned about color grading and then the dynamic range, you always want to look for a camera that shoots in S-Log, 10-bit, 422. I heard the FX30 is a bit more pink in S-Log and A74, but more green in S-Log. You know what? I do notice a slight color difference. Even I have the FX3 and the FX30. Even then, I still notice a slight color difference. So I could see that. I could for sure see that. Even the Sony cameras, when it comes to S-Log or just in general, they do give a green tint-ish. They lean more green, which I'm not a big fan of, but it's pretty easy to correct. But how are you guys feeling? We're going to end here in a couple minutes. It's been over an hour. I appreciate you guys for being here. But any more questions before we go, as far as the settings, what camera I should buy, what beginner, we'll get into that too. We have videos. Me and Caleb have trainings on that too as well that are coming out here. But as far as just understanding, how are you guys? You guys good? Any more questions before we go? Angel, I see thumbs up. Jesus, good. Nice. Okay, cool. And if you said good, nice, good. And as far as recommendations and stuff, if you guys have questions about gear, ND filters, shoot me a message and I'll send you guys links to what ND, what beginner cameras you guys should buy, things like that. But I'm super grateful for you guys to be here. This was, like I said, more of a beginner coaching call just to understand the basics. Because once you understand frame rate, shutter speed, ISO, you guys will have good looking videos. So if you guys don't have any more questions, let's just end with a prayer, and then we'll just go from there. Lord, we thank you. We come before you grateful and honored just to be in your presence, Lord. Grateful that you allowed us to learn about videography so that we may improve our skills, so that we may have a greater understanding to take better video, be better videographers, and capture better content that will be more effective to grow the kingdom, Lord. Be with us tonight. Keep us safe. Put your hand over us, Lord, and then continue to use us, Lord, as vessels in the church and our ministry, and grow our skills so that we may become professional, Lord, that we may do things with excellence, and guide our hands, guide our eyes, guide our creativity, and let us continue to build each other up, Lord. Let us have a good rest of our night. Let's get some good sleep. I know it's pretty late out there for some people, Lord, but just take care of us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Alrighty, guys. Thank you guys for joining. We are good to go. I really appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys later. God bless you guys. Later, Angel. Later, guys. Later, Jesus. Later, everybody.